Today's lesson is on multiplying with exponents. We're going to talk about two very important rules when you're dealing with exponents, the product rule and the power rule. So we're going to start with the product rule, and what the product rule says is that if you are multiplying two exponents, we'll take 3 to the 4th power times 3 to the 5th power. A shorter way to solve this, rather than to actually find 3 to the 4th and 3 to the 5th and multiply it together, is that you can simply add the exponents together and write it in exponential form, which would be 3 to the 9th power. And I'm going to show you why that rule works. 3 to the 4th power means 3 times itself 4 times. So it's basically 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 3 to the 5th power is the same thing, just 5 times. So there's 3 times itself 5 times. So this is 3 to the 4th power times 3 to the 5th power. Basically what I am doing is I'm multiplying 3 times itself 9 times. So in the first expression, we're telling you to multiply 3 times itself 4 times, then multiply 3 times itself 5 times. Essentially what I'm saying is multiply 3 times itself 9 times. That's all the product rule says, is that if you're multiplying two exponential expressions, now they have to have the same base. This number right here, that's the base. So the bases have to be the same. It doesn't matter if they're letters or numbers. But the bases have to be the same in order to do this. If one's an x, one's a y, or one's a 3, one's a 4, then you can't combine them together. You have to just keep them separate. But if they're the same base, the product rule says simply add the exponents together, and you can leave it in exponential form most of the time and leave 3 to the 9th power as your answer. So that right there is the product rule. And this can be applied with numbers or letters. So if instead of 3, I had maybe x to the 3rd power times x to the 12th power. X to the 3rd power means to multiply x, whatever that may be, 3 times. X to the 12th power says multiply it 12 times together. So altogether, I'm taking x, multiplying it times itself 15 times. So product rule says you can add the exponents as long as the bases are the same when there's multiplication. So it has to be multiplication and the bases have to be the same. Okay, now moving on to the power rule. The power rule is describing when you have a power, start with a number, on top of another power. So let's say you have 2 to the 3rd power to the 2nd power. That's what the power rule deals with, powers on top of powers. So, again, I'm going to break this up. 2 to the 3rd power essentially means 2 times itself 3 times. So I could rewrite it like this. I could rewrite this 2 to the 3rd power and break it up as 2 times 2 times 2. That's what it means. And we're taking that and we're raising it to the 2nd power. Well, anything squared means to multiply this whole thing, whatever's in the parentheses, times itself. So instead of having 2 times 2 times 2 squared, I could write it as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So here's my first one, here's my second one, so I've squared it that way. And again, since everything is multiplication in this case, order doesn't matter. The order that we multiply in doesn't matter, so these parentheses are unnecessary. I can take out these parentheses as long as it's all multiplication, because it doesn't matter if I multiply the first one together or the second ones or straight left to right. Multiplication will give me the same answer no matter what order. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm multiplying 2 times itself 6 times. So this represents 2 to the 6th power. The power rule states that you can simply multiply the exponents together when you have a power on top of a power like that. So that's what the power rule says. Again, this applies with numbers or letters. We don't have to worry about the base being the same because the power's on top of a power. It's going to have the same base. So whether that's a number like 2 or 5 or 10, Or if it's a letter like x to the 5th to the 4th power, the rule is still the same. If you have a power on top of a power, you multiply those powers together, and you can write it as x to the 20th in this case. So that's the product rule. When you're multiplying, you add the exponents together. And the power rule. When you have a power on top of a power, you multiply those exponents together. And that's all there is to the product and the power rule.